Welcome to Exploring Beyond the Edge with Dr. Synthia Andrews. Are you ready to explore the conscious path around you? Open your heart and mind and awaken your curiosity? You've stopped into the right place. Now, here is your host, Dr. Synthia Andrews.
Hey there, this is Synthia. Thank you for tuning in and showing up. I'm here tonight with my co-host, Colin.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Synthia and I would want to start again the second program by sending our thoughts and prayers to our family and friends and old folks down there in California, continuing to suffer the dreadful fires that we have seen now for too long. Hold in there. Rain apparently is on the way, maybe coming with a few of its own problems, but hold in there and know that we are thinking of you.
Yes, and if there's anything that we can do on this program to be helpful, please, anyone who's listening, let us know. So tonight, folks, I'm going to be interviewing Colin, my co-host here.
Just for a change.
Just for a change. But, I just want to say that people who know Colin know that for the past few years he has been refusing to do interviews and not going out into public very much. And I'm very grateful that he's here tonight answering questions and putting the conversation forward. And so for anybody who doesn't know Colin, he's been researching crop circles, UFO, and consciousness since 1983. And he provides a continuity between past research, the past research era, and the present events that are going on. He has extensive personal experiences, and he has relationships with some of the people who are thought leaders in the fields, and so he really has quite a contribution to make. Colin believes that interactions with an unknown intelligence are challenging people to a higher level of consciousness, and he's calling for openness, honesty in government and private research, and respect for divergent opinions with cooperation between investigators from all areas. So thank you, Colin, for being here tonight to talk with us.
It's a pleasure, Synthia. Kind of.
So, all right, so to get the conversation going, according to the Huffington Post in an article in August of 2017, nearly half of Americans believe that there is off-planet intelligence or aliens or whatever you would like to call them. And as many people believe that they are probably visiting Earth, otherwise, in other words, that there are UFOs, that UFOs are real. So we're not at a place anymore where we have to convince people that these things are real. Most people, at least half the population, already believe that. And the evidence that has moved people in this direction is their own personal experiences, as well as reports from the military and most recently, the amount of information that the government has been putting out about military interactions. But what we've noticed over the years is that the sightings have evolved from lights in the sky to complex interactions between the lights and individuals. And some of these interactions are quite physical, and some of them are almost telepathic. So I wondered if you would share maybe one of each and why they're different and how they're different.
Sure. Well, just to mention, the scale is enormous. When you look across the years of not just my own work, of course, but many other excellent researchers that are out there doing fantastic work. And I think one should just mention that at this point, this is a conglomeration of many, many thousands of hours by many good folks. But yes, one example that comes immediately to mind, one of many, of course, is a surveillance operation that I was involved in 1991 on a hilltop overlooking a crop circle hotspot at Alton Barnes in England. Now, remember, throughout this program, I'm certainly not going to be talking about, although I'll answer any calls that might come in, of course, about what that is behind the crop circles. There's going to be an inference here and there, but that's not the debate. We're moving beyond that now. We're getting down to what we have and what's going on. So during this surveillance operation in 91, it was the early hours of the morning. I was with a television crew from Nippon Television and a small group of individuals that had been working with me over the years. And we were set up, television cameras there, lights on, and we're ready for anything unusual to happen, looking straight down into what is known as the East Field, a field that has produced many circles over many years. And suddenly an amber light appeared, maybe about 30 degrees above the horizon. It was shimmering. It had a phosphorus quality to it. We all were watching it, and nobody saying anything for a few seconds. And the TV crew started filming this. One of them, the lighting engineer, picked up a bright beam of light, a flashlight, what would you call it here? A
flashlight.
A flashlight, and flashed it directly, beamed the light towards the light itself. And as they came into alignment, the light in the sky diminished, it went off, and it came back on again. The guy did the same thing again several times, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and it repeated the pattern. Well, I was the major civil emergency planning officer for central southern England in the Test Valley area at that time, and I had access and radios all over my vehicle and etc., which I had with me, access to all kinds of people, and I telephoned London Heathrow. Actually, it was the West Drayton Flight Control Centre near London Heathrow, and asked if they would, I didn't expect this, but I asked if they were able to confirm or not whether aircraft were in that vicinity. Remember, this is early hours of the morning. There's not a lot going on up in the sky, but West Drayton controls British airspace, and they were able to say, well, there actually are 2 aircraft up there. One of them is moving in your general direction, but they're well away. And I said, is there absolutely any chance that the pilots of these 2 aircraft would be prepared to extinguish their external lights? I heard them chattering going on to these 2 aircraft. And they came back to say that it's been offered for about 120 seconds and make it sharp. They will instruct their inside cabin to be extinguished as well as external lights. And so we were in a position here now, I think probably for the first time in my experience, we were able positively to eliminate aircraft from this situation. And indeed, the light continued to respond to the lighting engineer. This was filmed. It has been shown in Japan on a number of occasions. It has not been shown in the Western world. But that was one example of direct intervention or interaction that cannot be rationally explained.
So that was a physical interaction. What about a psychic type of interaction? What kind of things are reported there?
Well, funnily enough, there again are many, but one example which comes a little bit close to home here involved crop circle makers. These are the people that make crop circles. The circle maker John Lumberg, he may well be listening, tells of distortions that cause mistakes to be made in the construction of the designs, which then prove to have a greater significance afterwards. In one instance, Lumberg describes making a mistake in the execution of a design when, unbeknown to him, the team he was working with also, unbeknown to them, another team was making a circle in an adjacent field. This is in the middle of nowhere in central southern England, 2 teams at work, and a mistake is made. The mistake in the formation Lumberg was involved in corresponded directly to the other formation, so that it seemed as if one was interacting with the other. Another circle maker, Matthew Williams, many people out there will know Matthew has been involved in making circles and indeed researching them too. He's been 2 sides of the fence. Also talks of teams working in the fields unknowingly interacting with each other. In other instances, mistakes point to ancient sites and landscape contours and coloration that are not visible from the ground. And I would just add to that, this is something that, an English term, knocks my socks off, meaning it really astounds me, is this particular part of the phenomenon where from the air you can see slight variations in the nutritional uptake of the plants. When the nitrogen is applied, for example, the plants change their composition and color slightly when the farmers apply this. and the boundaries of the tractor in turning at the end of the field or underground archaeological sites are positioned precisely on those designs that are formed by people or not. Whether by people, and let's stay with that, whether by people or not, they cannot see these contours on the ground at all, let alone at night.
So would you, and I think we could also say that a lot of people report being, just driving down the road and kind of being instructed to go to a certain place, not that they're told anything, but they're compelled to go to a certain place, and then in that place an event will happen. They'll see a UFO or have some kind of an interaction.
Absolutely.
So our minds are being engaged, and that brings us to the question of, can these intelligences override human actions? Can they control military airplanes? Can they interface with our technology?
This is an important one. It's an important one because the answer to that is yes, they can. And it has been demonstrated by these objects on a number of occasions. They can interfere and unlock locked-on devices from our military aircraft, fighter aircraft, that are locking on to these UFOs in pursuit of them. When they need to pursue, they need to lock on and takes their GPS systems, etc., onto the location of the UFO. And at will, these objects will unlock those systems. They take it a step further. This is a case which we're not going to be able to go into detail. It would take 2 programs to do it. Many that are studying UFO will know of the Nimitz aircraft carrier incident off of the west coast in the Pacific, off the west coast of California in 2004. The details, I'm afraid, for another time. But what is important to be saying here is that the large number of UFOs that were seen and filmed, they were playing with these pilots on one occasion and but actually moved itself in this particular instance from in front of the aircraft itself and took up a new position to where the aircraft was intending to go. And so you have this reading of intention, reading of the mind of the human being involved.
So they're really inside our heads a little bit. So that brings us to a question I almost don't even want to ask, but does this intelligence that we're interacting with that can control technology and get inside of our heads, does it exhibit helpful or unhelpful intent towards life on Earth, or to human life on Earth?
I wonder if I could just come back to that one, Synthia.
I think that would be fine.
I'll come back to it because there is actually, I think, something a little more important that should place in front of that. I've gotten to know and trust certainly, Captain Robert Salas. And Robert spent 21 years with the FAA in the Air Force and was an air traffic controller and a missile launch officer, as well as an engineer on the Titan III missiles. Here's a guy we should be able to trust, right? Well, Robert was controlling at the control facilities where the Titan, I'm trying to remember the name of the actual missiles that were there. I can't pull it back. But the nuclear warheads that he was in charge of launching, their coding structure was being interfered with when from above at ground level, the military were reporting a UFO hovering above that facility at Malmstrom Air Force Base. And as he was informing his superior of what was happening, lights were coming on, the codes were dropping out, and the whole 16 nuclear missiles were made non-operational, and not just there, but at 2 facilities immediately after the first UFO showed up above their heads at the base there. So, that's another direct interference with our systems.
And it almost sounds like it's protective in some way, keeping us from making mistakes of different kinds. which kind of brings us back to what many people report, about these interactions being instructional. You and I had an instructional interaction in 1994 when we kind of had a download of information relating to each of our fields of expertise. And it seems to me that people often report that healing devices, the information for how to develop the healing device is downloaded to somebody, or, I don't know how to put it really.
Yes, absolutely.
New technologies. And so, what are your thoughts about those?
Well, it's very hard to make too much of them, because we just simply don't know the intention. This is going to be a difficult area until this expands and develops, evolves to the point that we can pick up on intention and know where it is we're supposed to be going with it. But I think it's certainly stretching our minds. It's putting us into a better place to fully implement the capacity that we have to work on these things. It's like sowing seeds, and we're expected to take them up and germinate them.
It does feel like we're being prepared for future encounters, that we are in development and we're being prepared for different things.
Yeah.
We have only a brief moment to break, but do you want to briefly say what was your most memorable experience?
Well, there truly are really many, and I've not had any until I started this work in '83. Pretty well none. But I think it has to be because of its just astounding inability to decipher why it was happening, was with Dr. Stephen Greer. We had about 50 of us were stood there, and we were there to watch the sky and see if anything unusual happened. And when a white light came through the cloud at high speed, split into two, that's what I saw. That's what half of the 50-odd people there saw. The other 25-odd, that's 25 seeing what I saw, another 25 seeing a cherry red light coming at speed directly over our heads. Two different descriptions, but, all happening at the same time.
Yeah, so it reminds me of what Dean Radin was saying last week, that different areas of your brain can be, activated, and that's an interesting thing. So we're going into a break now, and we'll be back in just a few moments to talk more with Colin Andrews. You can reach him on Facebook or at his website, colinandrews.net. A lot of the information we're talking about tonight is in his latest book, On the Edge of Reality, which you can get on Amazon or at my website, explorationsandenergy.com. Also, just to say that Colin has a GoFundMe project going on right now. He's trying to raise $3,500 to have his website professionally re-engineered, just so that we can make as much information available as possible. And anyone who's been on his website will know it definitely needs re-engineering. So, consider a donation. And thank you to everyone who already has. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back with more from Colin.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
We all have the inner ability to use the gifts within ourselves to serve ourselves, our families, loved ones, and our communities. Once you have discovered these gifts and talents, you can promote harmony, peace, and hope. To find out how to harness your own gifts and talents, tune in to Get Ready. Get ready for your breakthrough with host Felicia A. Hill, live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and 2 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Listen and share with others.
Moving forward can be difficult to do sometimes. There is always something going on. Many times, nobody else knows exactly what you're going through. If you are experiencing pain or loss, even something that is unexplained that is missing in your life, you'll want to tune into Go For It with host Joe Hausman. Joe and her guests will show you laughter and love. Sometimes you just need something a little positive in your week. Make that spot Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Voice America Empowerment.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
This This is Exploring Beyond the Edge. To reach Dr. Synthia Andrews or her guest today, please call 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. You may also send an email to energyexplorations@gmail.com. Now, back to our program.
Welcome back. We're talking today with Colin Andrews. So, Colin, I wanted to bring up also an experience that you and I had in Wales, where we were sitting in a restaurant, we were looking out the window. I saw, my memory is seeing a black garbage bag that just seemed to be floating in the air. It seemed to have gotten caught in some kind of an updraft, and it was hanging around the level of, just below the telephone wires. And we got up and we went outside, and it was still just hanging around by the telephone wire, kind of just floating. And we stopped and looked at it. And as we were looking at it, wondering why it wasn't either going up or coming down or going somewhere, a group of crows or ravens came around and attacked it. And when they began to attack it, it rolled into a very tight cylinder and became a shiny, hard object and flew off at speed over the trees. And I was just wondering what you've learned about that event since we had it.
Well, I'm reliving it as you're talking it. One of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was.
Totally inexplicable. Not as if it was a blurry little, like it could have been anything, in a photograph, like a small bird or something miles away.
We were about
this
5
was
feet
right
away.
in front of us. Yeah, I know, absolutely. That was the place, just for anybody who knows, the area, Crickhowell in Wales, a very small little hamlet. And yeah, it was exactly as you've described it. What was just extraordinarily bizarre was that as these, probably about half a dozen crows or more perhaps, were dive bombing it, they clearly were not happy with it, or they were checking it out. They were pecking at it, it was stretching, and then it was as if there was a hand inside the bag.
Yeah, because
But anyway, yes, you should say it turned a cylinder and a sphere. I think that's what I saw too. It was like quick shaping, and away it went. But since then, of course, I've studied and tried to find other reports to see, how they might equate. And one was much closer to me than I had realized, came from the circle makers. Again, this is the group. This is why we mustn't underestimate the entirety of the phenomena of the crop circles. To eliminate those that you associate with being man-made, of which many, if not most, are, we throw the whole thing away and don't appreciate what it is we're looking at. Because here we have people that have gone out, half a dozen or so of them, walking up a country lane, up a track to a field that they have in mind to make a crop design, and they too witness a black shape, which was just like a black plastic bag, they said, late in the evening or just around sunset. And it too was moving and shifting around in strange ways. They rushed to get under this canopy, out from under the canopy of trees to see it, and it had moved away at such a rate that it was now no longer visible. That was the second, only the other report I had ever heard of. But the next one came as I was looking through the internet, and this is a quite extraordinary, ongoing event that is happening very frequently and being filmed by a very nice woman, Gladys Cordova in Peru. And, for anybody who's really wanting to follow this up, please go to her YouTube site, GCEPERU. I'm sorry, let me say that again. GCEPERU. And search for Gladys Cordova. And just look for yourselves to see. You'll see there what look like white plastic bags. She's had several occasions when they have been the same as ours, this dense black, just like a garbage bag, that change shapes and interact with her. Let me just read to you, if I may. Have we got a few seconds here?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Let me just read to you a note that she sent to me for this program. It has been 9 years of continuous observation. She doesn't speak English, so this has been translated for her. I don't know the exact exactly the origin and structure of these beings that we had spotted in the hill in front of my house, like around 1 kilometer away. The interesting thing is the way that they catch my attention. For example, they shine to capture my attention, and I can record them on video. I saw them in different states, like lights, like plasmic energy, like plastic, aluminum foil, like clouds, like a candle and a metallic balloon. This kind of shapes form and show me the ease of transformation of these beings, and she calls them beings. They challenge traditional physics because I record them going through the rocks like Casper. They go through the rocks. Also, they can fly and levitate. They drop rays of light. It demonstrates an ability to create what it desires or what it desires to be. It tests our reactions as well as the reaction of our species. So, you know, it's
interesting because I felt like the bag that we saw was also trying to capture our attention. It was like dancing in front of the window that we were at, trying to get us to look at it.
Absolutely. She says that it transforms on several occasions to a human shape and to bird shapes. You know, it's just, I can't believe we're here talking about anything so bizarre.
So she's talking about an ease of transformation, and she's talking about morphing from one thing into the other thing, right?
Yeah.
So why is that important?
Well, I think it's important because what it does, again, is this expansive suggestion. It cannot be replicated. We have no ability to do this. And so we must look at it in a different light, in an expansive fashion. We cannot replicate this. It sets itself aside. It poses also the question, is it an object, a machine, or is it a biological creature?
You know, and that's interesting too, because at one point when the rooks were interacting with it, it felt like a biological creature. But when it became like that cigar shape that flew up over the trees, right. It was metallic and like a vehicle. That's
exactly right.
That's an interesting thing. Well, all of this takes us to another arena altogether, which is what does the government know, and what's the government doing with all of this? And so just, you know, very, very brief history, one sentence history, that in the past, you know, Stephen Greer had initiated the Disclosure Project, where he brought forward admirals and military people and all different people from within the government to expose what they knew in a public forum. And then that project was taken over by Steve Bassett. And the two of them kind of spearheaded this whole Disclosure Project. Then we had this whole thing where many different governments, the British government in particular, started revealing what was in their databases or in their files about...
admitted they had them to start with, whereas they had told us they hadn't.
Right. Our government has been a little bit more lax, but recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, more information has been coming out. And now there's this whole new government group that Harry Reid was talking about not long ago. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, this will be one that those that are following the research of UFOs will be fairly familiar by now in the last few weeks, since the New York Times published a major article December last year. But for the listeners unfamiliar, this is a group known as the AATIP, which stands for Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which was run by Luis Elizondo, an official in military intelligence deep inside the Pentagon. This was a secret Defense Department study of unidentified flying objects that was funded with an allocation of $22 million, secured, as you were suggesting, by the Senate Majority Leader then, Harry Reid, after meetings with Robert Bigelow, who is the CEO of Bigelow Aerospace, an organization that was for a while the reporting agency for all official U.S. UFO reports. It is also believed that is the new organization in a new warehouse is also believed to have materials thought to be of extraterrestrial origin. It is known that there is analysis going on of some of that material. Reid secured funding for Bigelow Aerospace to conduct a study into UFOs. The funding was obtained without a hearing, which is very bizarre, without a hearing or a floor debate, because of course it's black budget, I guess, starting in late 2008. It is a claim that the investigations continued even after the funding ran out in 2012. Seemingly as part of its work, the US government moved assets onto a UFO and paranormal hotspot known as the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. This is a key site because of the frequency and the multiplex and the bizarre nature of the manifestations taking place there. This, to me, is a comparative site to Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, England. And I think just to say...
Although that's an interesting comparison, because Skinwalker, as I understand it, most of the encounters that happen there are very frightening and would appear to be quite negative in their impact.
Yes.
And Silbury Hill is exactly the opposite.
Exactly the opposite. It has raised a major question. I mean, you're looking negative to the point that we're looking at orbs of light, encouraging dogs to chase them in Utah and then vaporizing them. And, we won't go into the rest. Anybody can read this in the Skinwalker book. But it's important to say that I'm speeding on here because this is an important one. The Pentagon's AATIP program officially ended in 2012, but similar work continues today, although denied, involving people from both the defense, that is the defunct Defense Department program, and Bigelow's company. They have become part of a for-profit company to the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, which launched in October 2017 to research and reverse engineer UFOs, amongst other goals.
Hold a minute, stop. So what you're saying is that they have taken government information, they privatized it, and now they're back engineering it to put this forward as new technology? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what it would suggest.
Okay,
that is what it would suggest. Yeah, no, certainly. So the Stars Academy of Arts and Science has mobilized a team of the most experienced, connected, and passionately curious minds from the U.S. intelligence community, including the CIA and the Department of Defense, that have been operating under the shadows of top secrecy for decades. Remember, we're looking at a long period when they denied any involvement, no threats to national security, and here we have it now. It's all been going on secretly. What I would probably call a social engineering and scientific awareness program is being planned. Okay, so what is it that demands such careful handling? I propose that it's what we're talking about tonight. It's now a matter of not what we don't know about this subject, it's what we do know.
So by that, I think that you mean taking what we do know and moving forward with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, is what we'll be certainly talking about in a few minutes. I'm kind of thinking back to crop circles and Nick Pope and the situation in England and the release of information and how there was adamant denial that they had any interest at all in crop circles. And yet, why wouldn't they? Why would the government not be interested in anything that was happening in military land, in military airspace? Why would they not be interested in the whole idea that there was that they haven't had any research?
Right. Well, you know much that many people don't. That I had correspondence going on with senior people, right up to Deputy Prime Minister level in the British government and in the royal family, in parts of the royal family, and through my own members of Parliament, right to the Home Office, etc., to the police departments who were cooperating with me. I had the correspondence to prove what I was saying, and when I was saying that there were a number of significant aspects to the phenomena that they were themselves involved in. They not only denied they were, they put out basically the picture that I was lying. And I don't want this to be a negative program, so I'm going to cut that loose. But just to say that I went on live BBC radio program with Nick Pope, who again may well be listening, in fact to read some of the evidence and to show that I had the evidence that I was going to publish in a book, that my statements were correct and honest, and they accepted, he on the behalf of the Ministry of Defense, that my version of the facts was correct.
Yes, and as
this has proven it to be.
Should have.
We
indeed.
now know.
All right, so there was one other question I wanted to ask you about your DC meeting.
Yes, okay. How many seconds have I got?
Well, would you want to come back to that?
Well, I can say briefly that there's information that was conveyed to me during a meeting I was asked to present to government officials and intelligence agencies, mainly in DC, back some years ago, and I was approached by a person at a very high level, which caused quite a panic with men in suits and wires stuck in their ears, and basically surrounded us when I was approached with some very sensitive information pertaining to Silbury Hill in England and events that were being monitored by UK and US departments.
And this is the subject of a book that you're going to be having coming up shortly.
Yeah. There's a lot going on at Silbury Hill, which is of importance.
Mm-hmm. And most of that so when we look at Silbury Hill and then we look at Skinwalker, I have to ask the question, and I know the people at Skinwalker Ranch who were investigating that, George Knapp and your friend from Canada.
Yeah, I don't think we should mention them.
Okay, well, so these people we know are of very positive intent, and yet one has to ask, is the difference between these two locations related to the intention with which people are bringing to the investigation? In one case, well, I think you know what I'm saying. Right?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point to make, and we've all got to be open and honest enough to go there with it. Unless we share these experiences, we're open about it, that it enters the public domain and therefore expands the whole conversation, we're not going to get there. We've got to understand who we are before we can understand anything else. We've got to get the act together here.
Got to know thyself. All right.
Know thyself, indeed.
So I think we are heading into a break here, and we are going to come back shortly to talk with Colin Andrews. You can reach him on Facebook. You can reach him at his website, colinandrews.net. His latest book, On the Edge of Reality, has a lot of the information we're talking about tonight is in there. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on my website, explorationsenergy.com. And again, Colin does have a GoFundMe project to redo his website, which is greatly needed. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back with more from Colin Andrews.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
Being Here with Ariel and Shia Kane is an ordinary person's guide to modern-day enlightenment. This show is an exciting exploration that opens the door to living in the moment. Don't miss Being Here. Tune in every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with award-winning authors Ariel and Shia Kane, right here on the Empowerment Channel.
It's time for you to take a sweet and honest look at your life. Tune into Living Within the Sweet Spot with your host, Nikki Klegel. Each week, Nikki invites you to call into the program, where she will connect with each listener to show the power of God's love in every unique instance. There are gracious gifts and elements of power within each one of us. You just need to discover them and find your life's purpose. Live healthier and happier. Listen every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Empowerment. The Voice America Live Events channel is here now to showcase your corporate, individual, or organization's live event. Visit voiceamerica.com/live events to see all of our past live events and find out more. Whether it's a multi-day conference, special speaker, or single-day event, we've got everything to make your event a success. We can do a few hours or a few days. For more information about taking your event to the next level, call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or email info@voiceamerica.com. Again, that's Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or send us an email to info@voiceamerica.com. Voice America is where you are and where you want to be. Join us around the globe as we broadcast live from some of the most interesting events available. Don't forget to view all our live events, including on-demand access to past events that you may have missed by visiting voiceamerica.com/live events.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
This is Exploring Beyond the Edge. To reach Dr. Synthia Andrews or her guest today, please call 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. You may also send an email to energyexplorations@gmail.com. Now, back to our program.
So welcome back. We're talking with Colin Andrews. And, just to finish off the discussion we were having before break about government involvement in this research and in the disclosure projects, it seems to me that a lot of people are waiting for the government to do something, and they're acting as if the government has more awareness than we have of what's going on, or that the government has more opportunity than we have to interact with it. And I would just like to state from, that isn't true, that individuals are far more powerful than governments and having far more interactions than governments are, and that maybe all the governments have is a database.
I agree with you. I think they're in a better position to be appropriate with the events too, because they're in control of them. That is the public. I do think that where they may well have an edge, they should have for what how much of our money they spend on it, is that they have the technical know-how. They have the the ability up in the sky there with the satellites, which has gone, it certainly has become, highly technical now. So they have that, and most of us don't. But I don't think they know a darn single thing more than we do about events on the ground. And I think we're just about to demonstrate some of those that is probably what's driving this paradigm shift that we're going through now, where they know they have to become much more integrated and involved with the public, in social engineering, if that's what it takes. We're there. We are there.
Right, and so that brings us to really what the topic of tonight's show is that if individuals are having these interactions, and one of the things you've been really strong about is that it's time for all of us to bring our information together, to begin to talk and to share and to be open and honest with each other about what we're experiencing so that we have a bigger picture. And so what, in that light, what is the next step? Where are we?
Well, let me just say that, to tail off what you're saying there, is that no government, no society, no religion, nobody owns our advancement in consciousness.
No.
That is ours. So, sorry, what was your question?
What's the next step, Colin?
Oh, the next step. Yes, that's right. Right, no, seriously. Well, I think what it is this. And I'll just recap, because it's important to, gently just bring us to where we are, to that next step. What are we dealing with when considering the next step for society? What do we know? UFO and the ET has shown us the following. It transmits presence. It reads human intention, interact with thought and human gesture. It can override human actions, including our most fearsome invention in the nuclear arsenal. Change its shape and form, possibly its purpose. It appears and disappears, materialize and dematerialize at will. These are not possibilities. These are known facts. So we should ask ourselves the following. Can we influence the future by positive intentions while observing them? Remember the well-known principle, foundational principle in quantum physics, the observer effect. So it's how we feel, what our intentions are as we're observing this escalating, evolving paradigm. There's no going back. We're moving forward now. This is where it has to go. So that the next step is coming together.
So really you're talking about developing our inner responsiveness to the phenomenon, like what is it that gets in the way within us to the phenomenon itself so that we resist these interactions. And, frankly, that is going to be a lot of what next week's program is about. But when we are looking at our own inner resistances, the first thing that comes up for most people is fear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I think that's causing all the concern, and the care that has to be taken now in what I think is very clearly going to be a social, societal engineering, a social engineering project of movies, of expanding the information that is known through people like Gaia, through
which is already underway.
All of that's underway. It has to be underway. You cannot go cold into a situation like this. So what do we need to bring to this conversation, really, which is, I think, it's faith and confidence in ourselves. This means a lot to me through personal experiences, mainly, but by what I've seen and heard from others too. It's sincerity. These are values, but they're also, it's who we are and what can make a difference in the future. With what's being demonstrated to us. It's what we're being prompted on. So much of this is prompting. Others, as you say, is material information that takes us forward. It's
reminding me of when we do spiritual work and we have to overcome the things within us that get in the way of our spiritual development. And so we have to meet those things in the outside world. And we meet them in ways that trigger and bring the emotion to its fullest. And then when we overcome it, when we master it, the presence that we project has that confidence, has that sincerity and that openness because we've learned who we are inside. And so this whole encounter is a process of learning who we are. And maybe who we are as humans isn't really what we've been told we are all along.
That is right. We're going to have a lot of respect for one another. We're going to have to show that, demonstrate it, and take great care with one another. That their religious beliefs come with history, and nobody can be blamed. Nobody should be blamed for it. We've got to show compassion to one another here, and for all species. And I would just say, very quickly that going back to '87, many people would have heard me say this many times. So I'll just keep it to the to the punchline, as it were, which is when I was praying or meditating, you might say. You can use whichever terms you like. Only I know what was inside of me when I did this. This is why I've repeated it ever since 1987. It's ludicrous to repeat a lie over so many years. I'm still here because of what happened there, and I was within sight, almost just over the hill from Stonehenge, and I stood there alone, and I put my hands together, and I asked for a clue. I was stood just on the edge of a ring that an airline pilot had reported from the sky, and I asked for a clue, and shockingly, I got one. It was a high-energy electrostatic crackling sound, very close to my feet. So what I was able to ascertain from that internal conversation was that my sincerity counted for something, that I was there alone. I was only trying to prove something for myself. And with all that was going on in my life at that time, sincerity is important. Compassion and respect for all life and in all forms and in all places. This is important to our future. Without ET, it's important, I think, with it too. So that's what I think, we should probably come towards our end with, those are the values that will guide us.
Mm-hmm. And you've spent the last 3 decades looking at hotspots all over the planet, and you keep, you've seen so many different areas of UFO activity, of crop circle activity, and you keep being drawn back to Silbury Hill, which is, as we said before, going to be the subject of your next book. And I'm just wondering, in the 3 minutes or so that we have left, if you could share with us why that hotspot is so important. What's special about Tilbury Hill?
Well, not only does it have its own, you might say, energy, it has its own attraction for anybody that's been there and has witnessed it. It's an awesome site, the largest man-made pyramidal mound.
Well, in the way
Europe.
that it's built, isn't it a battery of sorts?
In the Clonchet cell, there is an electrical potential. It's a very small one between the top and the bottom. However relevant that is has never been fully explained, or I don't think fully investigated either. But that's just one perspective. I keep returning there because the more I look, the more I hear, the more I see, the more reports I get, including the government information which is going to be revealed in this book. Like it or not, this is what's going to happen. I keep getting drawn back because of the quality of the multi-witness cases here. We're looking at the police, we're looking at military, and nuclear scientists, many others that report extraordinary cases, multi-witness. I've interviewed them personally, and I'm continuing to. I'm still involved very much with a couple of cases that I'm trying to kind of really finalize, that I've got all the details right. They're outstanding. Something extraordinary is happening. And this is for us all now to understand and to grow with, to take into the mix, because this is the new paradigm that we are moving into. We have come to a crossroads, and the choice now is ours.
So in the couple moments we have left, would you want to share one of the experiences that people have had at Silbury Hill?
Yes, this is
maybe the one with Clackelly.
Yes, well, Clackelly, but you can describe Clackelly himself. You know him as a friend.
Native person from Aztec culture down in Mexico, an amazingly brilliant teacher and leader. Yeah,
he was being driven. He was a fairly elderly man, I believe 90 so when he passed, not all that long ago. He was in the back of a motor car being driven across Mexico, and a light was behind the vehicle. He was into his head, was told to find the place of the last ceremonial dance. It was a sentence that was given to him and a pattern, a geometry. He came with his interpreter to our offices, your offices, Synthia, which I was sharing at the time in Guildford. And we looked for the pattern that he was looking for. One appeared almost identical that very day.
As he was leaving the office.
As he was leaving the office, a fax machine started up with Reg Presley of the Trogs, my friend at the time, talking about this very pattern. And indeed, where it had appeared, at the place of ceremonial dance.
That's
Silbury Hill. That's a brief story, but there are many that are quite amazing.
When we took him there, we were met by this young guy who comes bicycling over the hill.
A cold winter's eve day as well, if I remember it.
Out of nowhere, and stopped in front of Cleckley Alley, and he says, what was it?
My ancestors, thank you for coming.
Yeah,
and this was a young boy on a bicycle riding across a ploughed field directly to Clackelly.
Yeah.
And the two of them, I could have cried when it happened. The old man looking in the young boy's eyes, and the young boy saying just exactly that.
I don't know how young boyish he was. I think he might have been in his early 30s.
Well, maybe my grey matter was a little older than his then. Well, I remember as being a little bit younger than that, but that's the story.
Yes, and I do think that in, I remember going up on top of Silbury Hill with Reg and his band, his music, and playing some of his music for the spirits of Silbury Hill, which is also very touching. It was a very touching moment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so, we've been talking about a lot of different things tonight, but it does come back to ourselves and how we receive this phenomenon and how well we know ourselves and how well developed our presence is. Because in the end, what is interacting with these other beings is our intellect for sure, but our presence even more so. And so that really is the topic of next week's night discussion.
Show. It's called show. Show. This is what's going wrong here.
Where I am in the hot seat that Colin was in tonight, and I will be talking about the tools of engagement, the inner skills and awarenesses that we need to develop to expand our consciousness to take on board this interaction. So I hope that you all come back next week and tune in. I'm excited about the show, and then from there we're going to be having a show on emotional clarity using constellation process. We're going to be having a show on forgiveness, and it sounds like most people won't want to show up for that one, but you will want to show up because she has some pretty amazing things to say. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you very much, Colin.
Yes, my pleasure, Synthia. Our world is changing. Yes. There's no getting off.
So everybody have a really great week, and we will see you next Monday. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Exploring Beyond the Edge is heard every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time and 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Until our next program, Dr. Synthia Andrews wishes you a great week.